No, no, for my life.
You got booted.
Hey, got it. I can see that.
I'll study now.
Yeah, he's just downstairs. While we wait for him, good morning from the National Press Club. My name is Tanya de Venter-Baker. I'm the chairperson. This is our first briefing for the new year, so welcome to all of you. We actually have two briefings today. We have another one at 12 o'clock, also here with the South African Further Education and Training Student Association, so don't miss that one. And we will also, next week, we will announce our 2016 Newsmaker of the Year award, who we awarded Newsmaker last year. So today we welcome Reshall and Jimmy. Did I say that correctly?
Yes.
They are the family members of Reshall Jimmy, who died in an alleged Kuga incident in 2015. And we also welcome Attorney Ron Montaro, who will join us shortly. And then we will also try to Skype in the forensic investigator, Dr. David Gladso. All right, but we will start with the family. Let's just wait for the attorney to sit. Senior legal. Welcome. I've already welcomed everyone and introduced. That's the attorney, and also the Consumer Commission is sending a senior legal advisor that will also he or she will also join us shortly. And then I understand there's also another victim with you guys, or here today, Sean Thompson, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
in the back there. So another victim. Without further ado, let's start, and I would like to start by asking the family, maybe you can decide who wants to answer. Before we talk about the incident and your reaction to yesterday's briefing, can you just give us just tell us quickly, who was your brother? Because we don't know anything about him as a person.
Reshall was one of the gentlest souls that anyone who's had the privilege of meeting. A very responsible young man. He represented a father figure for my young nephew, Anisha's son. He took care of my mum and my elder sister. He was at the peak of his career, or starting the peak of his career. Achieved probably one of the major milestones of his specific career with Native VML. Very level-headed person, very caring, sensible, a lot more practical than myself, and great brother, great person. So much one could say about it. It's hard to find something specific that stands out.
Thank you. Let's get to your reaction to yesterday's briefing.
On one hand, we were partially relieved that Ford has finally done a recall, which saves Ford Kuga drivers from further trauma and risk of losing their lives. On the other hand, we were very disappointed in some of the answers they gave. One can only look at international media and you'd find lots of cases on record on the Louisville issues in the US, which date back as far as 2011 with the 7-3 court in 2013. The published reasons for this recall are almost exactly similar to those of South Africa, and one can imagine why did they not take those steps in the South African vehicles to ensure that the South African consumers are not affected by that. And clearly they did not. They knew of some fires reported to them early in 2015. They've left it to the insurance company, as Nemeth has alluded to yesterday, because if you're insured, in his words, insurance should cover that. It's not for Ford to get involved in that. And it's only when the death occurred of my brother did this matter become a bit out of control for Ford. And their first gut instinct was to try and point evidence in any direction but themselves. You know, one would expect with any big brand, especially an international brand like Ford, that shortly after an incident like this, they'd contact the family and not only offer their condolences, but more importantly, share with us what would be their plan on investigating the matter, so that we could have some sort of comfort that this matter is being investigated. We did not hear from Ford whatsoever. It was only after we wrote an email to Mark Fields and Jeffrey Nemeth did we get a response from Peter Fester on behalf of that email that I sent to them. And that's where the communication channel started opening. Shibishi Muratana came on record with Rod Montano. And in that first meeting, which we worked so hard to get, he made it clear that he did not want the family there. And Rod can share some very important things that were discussed at that meeting, which also paints a picture as to what we expected to take place from there on. Up to this point, we generally believe that a brand as reputable as Ford, they do the right thing. They just needed time to investigate, and they would give us a closure we certainly needed. And more importantly than our closure was to bring a recall of sorts for all the other Kuga drivers of South Africa to save them from this trauma. It's not been easy. One says, we speak to many people who've lost loved ones and they give us advice to do various things, but the most common thing is that, take time will heal things. For us, it's still yesterday that we lost him, because every day we're reliving this issue. I've got to talk to media, I've got to talk to specialists, I've got to talk to international media, and we've got to go into in depth, in detail about his loss. I can account for every minute on the 4th of December that we've lost him, and everything we've done for the last year. And that's what Ford's forced us to do. They forced us to relive this loss every day, and it gets heavier and heavier for us to deal with. And they seem to think that we are looking for many different things, and they don't understand the simplest thing we want is closure. We want them to accept responsibility on this defect, and they need to understand that South Africa is as important as the people that live in the US or the UK, where they do recalls shortly after 1 or 2 incidents. We've had more fires in South Africa than they had in Louisville in the months that we've reported the fires that we've accounted for. But they've done 7 recalls in Louisville. So, they're waiting for data. We've managed to accumulate data in days of taking our social media campaign now.
Would you like to add to that before we get to the attorney?
From yesterday, I just believe it's not a proper recall that's being done. I don't see very much of a difference of what they've done over the period of December. Because people are taking their cars in, they're going to repair it and give it back to them. And my biggest concern is people have did this in December and cars have burnt after. So for me, they should have taken these cars off the road. So yesterday, very disappointing that that's a safety recall. And people still have to drive around with their families, and South Africans don't feel safe in those cars. And pushing them towards their insurance if they do have a fire and take no accountability, it's gobsmacking for me that they would do that.
Attorney Montaro, first of all, on behalf of whom do you act? And then what would the next legal steps be?
Initially, I've been instructed by the Jimmy family. The initial goal was to assist in the investigation by the George SAPS into the inquest matter relating to Reshall's death. As the matters progressed over the last year, obviously with the epidemic of Ford fires that have occurred, Renisha has taken it upon herself to establish a Facebook page, which is the Ford Cars Burning. Through the medium of that page, we have come into contact with all the other Ford Kuga fire victims. Contact has been had with them, and I'm actually also currently instructed to act on their behalf in the bringing of a class action against Ford.
I think let's open the floor for questions. Antoinette, before Antoinette, will you phone the doctors? Okay, please indicate your name and your media house. There, one there, and there. You can start.
Thank you. My name is Gianni Kalidis from Eyewitness News. Just for Mr. Montano, you were saying that you're representing a number of other victims. Firstly, can you tell us how many people you are representing? And in terms of a class action, can you just give us a little bit more detail, perhaps in layman's terms, just to explain to us what this means going forward in taking this action against Ford?
Yesterday morning we attended at the National Consumer Commission. We handed in 31 formal claims. We are in the process of obtaining the remaining few victims. The difficulty that we've had is obviously during the December period is getting into contact with those persons. Consultations are ongoing, and we do anticipate that we would act on behalf of all Ford Kuga fire victims. The class action aspect relates to the common thread that it is obviously targeted at Ford, would be the respondent in the matter. Each individual claim would obviously be dealt with on its own merits. We currently intend pursuing such actions jointly through the NCC, as well as bringing the necessary civil claims against Ford for the losses suffered by the parties.
Graham?
Graham Hoskin from the Times. In terms of the Ford High Court application against the family, and I mean, we saw in court last week that they've accused the family of being obstructive, along with the police of being obstructive and deliberately misleading, attempting to mislead their investigation. What is the family's reaction to that? I mean, I understand that letters have been written to the family and to yourself, Rod, quite recently. In terms of that, what is the family's stance in that? I mean, what kind of cooperation or dealings have you had with Ford recently?
Well, I think it's important to note that Ford made no attempt to contact the family until I sent an email to Jeffrey Nemeth and Mark Fields. When we finally met with Jeffrey on the 15th of December last year at BBM Attorneys in Bedfordview, one of the things I stated to him is that with the lack of Ford contacting the family, we did not start the process to build a circle of trust which would encourage the sharing of information. I've also shared with Jeffrey that it was always in the family's best interest to share information to expedite a conclusion of the outcome of the investigation. The report that they shared with us on the 15th of December, which was based on the investigation of the 5th of December by the American forensic expert, indicated that the fire started in the rear, specifically in the boot of the vehicle. I specifically stated to Jeffrey and to his colleagues in that room that we have evidence that we can share with them that would help point them in a more honest conclusion of the report, and specifically that the fire in the vehicle started in the front of the vehicle, and that the fire started in the inside front cabin of the vehicle. We never suggested to Ford that this was an engine fire. We've always stated that this was an electrical fault which started in the front inside dash of the cabin of the vehicle. The meeting pursued with Ford requesting to see the post-mortem. My response to that request was, what does a post-mortem have to do with an electrical fault in a vehicle, or in Ford's own report stating that it started in the boot in the vehicle, which is absurd. But I said to them that I've read the post-mortem because the only way I could conclude that that was my brother was deceased, I was succumb to a DNA test to prove that it was my brother. And when the DNA test was released to me, it was released with the post-mortem report. And that's how I have a copy of that. I advised Ford that I have no problem allowing them to read the report. I cannot give them a copy of it because it's a highly sensitive document to the family. I then advised them that they can have sight of the Firewise report from Dial Direct. They could also have sight of a video that we have that indicates the fire started from the front, or when the first responders more specifically arrived at the site, the fire was only in the front and it slowly or very quickly spread to the back. The meeting ended with us agreeing that we would have a meeting which would be scheduled by Ford with our legal counsel, where they would share the wiring diagram of the Ford Kuga, as well as photographs taken on the 15th of December 2015 by their first photographer with Dr. Klatzo. And when we exchange this information, we will share with them what they need to see. They've made no attempt to call us since that meeting, but they've gone to High Court and made an application which you refer to. And what frustrates me is that in this application, which I've read, Shibishi Moritane, which puts on an affidavit that the family has not shared any information with them. This morning we've received a letter, which I'd allow Rod to get into, where it's addressed to us from BBM, that the family needs to be honest with the media and tell media that we have indeed not wanted to share things which is not true. So part of the meeting that I sat in, where everyone is in the meeting room, I recorded some of this meeting from my own notes. And in that meeting, it's very clearly recorded that Dr. Klatzo stated to them that we should schedule an appointment on the Zambezi Bridge as a lighthearted joke, and walk halfway across the bridge and hand over documents to each other to share it, since both parties had a trust issue with each other. And that was following my statement that we need to build a circle of trust. because ultimately we need to get to the conclusion of my brother's death.
Okay, can we try, I'm going to get to the answers now. Let's try to phone the forensic investigator quickly because he is ready. It's Dr. David Glatzer.
Do you want to talk about this?
Hello.
Good morning, doctor. Can you hear us?
Good. Can you see me?
No, we can't see you.
Right, let's try that. There you are.
Good morning,
Roughly.
doctor. Can you maybe start by telling us what did you investigate and what was your findings?
Right. So far, my investigation has been on the issues surrounding the unfortunate events in which Mr. Jimmy died. I observed Ford in their investigation into the car in December of last year. At that stage, Ford indicated and told the police and us that they were not releasing their report, which I thought was both arrogant and also not in the spirit of the things that we were discussing. Subsequently, they did release the report to us and I would say that was probably only after I went on radio to say that I was unhappy with this, and they released that report to us a few days later, which I went to that meeting with a number of people who were there, namely Mr. Nemeth, who's the CEO, he's the big man there, their legal counsel, Mr. Mario Tona, their outside attorney, Mr. Xavier, and Mr. Jim Engel, who was the expert from the States. They released a report to us, a PowerPoint presentation, and before I could ask a single question, Mr. Nemeth told me that the expert had to rush out to catch a plane in the middle of the day, and he couldn't stay for anything, not even to say goodbye virtually. So he rushed out without any questions. Now the problem that Ford have got with that report is that they say that report indicates that the fire started in the back of the vehicle. That simply cannot be correct. There are a couple of reasons for that. The first reason is that there are eyewitnesses who saw the fire in the front under the dashboard first, before it spread to the back. At least 2 eyewitnesses. Secondly, there is a video which is quite clear. It was taken by one of the passers-by. It is quite clear that the fire was burning in the front of the vehicle, not in the engine compartment, but in the front of the vehicle, under the dashboard, first. So their expert report from the States is simply incorrect. And it was a very amateurishly done report, I must add. The second problem they've got is this, is that Ford actually employed the services of a man called Mr. Young. Mr. Young holds himself out as a fire investigator, and he investigated that car. And at the investigation that Young did, together with the police forensic expert and together with the insurance expert, Mr. Young came to the conclusion that fire, all 3 came to the conclusion the fire started in the front of the car, under the dashboard, not in the engine and not at the back. So Ford have that report, and they are being very coy about releasing it. Now that is always distressing when you have a big company like Ford who go off looking and shopping for reports that suit them. That is an abuse of the forensic process, and they need to come clean and tell us what's in that report and why they don't like it. Mr. Nemeth was asked this morning on the Kino Kami show on Cape 567 Cape Talk about the Young report, and he ducked the question completely. He simply didn't answer the question. The second thing that's the problem with this, Ford have now launched an application in the High Court where they allege that nobody is collaborating with them and that they're not getting any kind of collaboration whatsoever. That is untrue. They've come to the court and they are making a statement under oath which I'm afraid seems to lack truthfulness. Because I personally, at the meeting in December, said to Mr. Nemeth, I will give you whatever we've got, provided you supply us with a Young report, a wiring diagram, and if you give us the photographs originally taken of the car, because remember, I'm having to look at that car a year later. So I said to Nemeth himself, he was sitting right next to me, I could have put out a hand and touched him. I said to him, you're in a position to instruct your attorney to do that. Please do it. And he refused. He looked at his legal counsel, both of them, and he then looked back at me and he never said a word. So for him to say that we were not prepared to share is untrue. They kept saying to us at that meeting, we want you to give us, we want you to give us. And I said to them, do you not understand, share means a two-way process. We can meet on the Zambezi River Bridge and we can hand over the documents if you really want to. I tried to make light of it. So for them to come to court and say that we were uncooperative is untrue. They were uncooperative and they are still uncooperative. And I want more than just a wiring diagram, Mr. Nemeth. That's what I want from you. What we are, these are simple things, and we need to ask why you are hiding Young's report and why you won't give us the photographs originally taken by your field operative. So that is the issue that I have.
Thank you, Doctor. Can you stay on the line while we do questions and answers, please?
Sure.
Let's get back to the questions. There was a question here. Let's start with you.
Hi, my name is Malum Bielaboy from ENC. My question was directed to the family. I just want to understand was there a problem with Mr. Jimmy's vehicle before he embarked on a journey to the West Africa?
Yes. So in fact, he had the first issue that he had with his vehicle was his brakes. The challenge he had with that was related to his brakes wearing out unusually fast, and he actually consulted me with that advice. And I asked him, my advice to him was just to buy new brakes. It's a faster way to get it done. And then he kept having power issues with the vehicle. I sat in his car with him when he was driving it, and he just lost all power. So much so that at a point whilst he was driving his car, he just bursted forward, and I said, what are you doing? And he said, well, this is what happens to my car. Whilst I'm driving it, it loses power. I then overcompensate on the acceleration, and then everything just kicks in. We've got affidavits from witnesses confirming that his vehicle was parked in the basement of his work, and it was locked with the keys in his pocket. It's one of the vehicles that uses an ignition to start, and it was switched on. He thought this was a joke from his friends, and he went down laughing about it, thinking that they're trying to, joke between colleagues. And when he went down to his vehicle, it was locked, switched on.
But it was in motion.
Yeah, no, it was switched on and idling. You had to put the keys in it, turn it on and turn it back off. And the week before he left for George, he took his vehicle into Ford. I believe it was Ford William Nicol, for a service check, and he asked him to please look into this vehicle because he's had these power issues, and he's concerned that it's not safe. He's driving quite far, and they told him his vehicle is safe. It was good to go. So there has been problems that he experienced his vehicle. Yes, he did take it multiple times to Ford William Nicol. Shortly after his death, they alleged that there was no trail of any of these service records of his car. And later in a meeting with Rod Montano, we uncovered that the service records were indeed still intact on their system, which we now have proof of. And this was some 8 months later. Correct, Rod?
Yes.
If you may just explain that to us.
Service history.
Yes, how you got the service history.
We were directed after letters that were initially directed to Jeff Nemeth. He directed us to Craig Absalom.
Craig Absalom contacted me, yes.
Yes, he contacted us.
Craig Absalom, who is a dealer principal at Ford Fury.
Santon.
He was the primary service giver to the vehicle of Reshall Jimmy. An undertaking was given to us that all cooperation would be forthcoming. All we needed to do was contact them. We did have a meeting with them. At said meeting, we made certain requests. A copy of the service history was given to us. We further requested that all email correspondence between Reshall and his service advisor a man by the name of Leon Groenewald be disclosed to us. An undertaking was given to disclose such documents to us, and to date we have not yet received them. We did pursue the aspects with Ford at the meeting that was held with Mr. Nemeth on the 15th of December. We further advised them as to the name and identity of the service advisor, requesting them to further disclose said documentation to us. To date, we have not received it.
I just have one question for the family. Sorry for the loss. Amina Akram, SABC. What would make it justifiable? Are you looking for an apology from Ford? How much do you want them? You know, what amount would justify? I mean, it wouldn't justify, obviously, but they've got to pay for something. You know, they owe you something. What would you want Ford to do?
I think to start, for them to stop making a mockery of my brother's death. They're focusing more time at the image and attitudes of individuals at Ford South Africa. It seems to be they're fighting a personal battle rather than a brand issue on identifying the true cause of the death of my brother. We'd like to simply get to a conclusion. What caused the fire, which we are pretty confident that we know what caused, not what caused it, how the fire started. And for that to be accepted by Ford. And a sincere apology preferred to my mum, and not condolences offered at the NCC in a public forum where Jeffrey has done yesterday. And does it take a year for them to actually make condolences to us? The first condolences offered by Jeffrey Nemeth was on the 15th of December, when we met with him. And that's a year and 9 days after my brother's death. From what we understand of how this fire started, is for Ford to make some really concerted efforts to ensure that other Kugas in South Africa are not going to have the same problem. Our concern about the safety recall is that if we look at the issue in KZN, the consumer took his vehicle into a dealership, it was checked, told it was safe to go back on the road, and 30 kilometers later it burst into flames. So how safe is their repairs? Because his vehicle was repaired by Ford under the software water bottle thing they refer to. And that's where we are really concerned that what they said yesterday is not really going to 100% address the risk of these vehicles continuing to burst into flames.
All right, Anton, first you, and then Anton, you can ask your question.
The question for the investigator, but he seems to be gone. Yes. But I've got one for the family, please. First, my condolences for the loss. But I want to ask, they ask government departments or watchdogs which are in place to protect the consumers. And I understand you're working with the NCC, and there are others as well who are meant to protect the consumer. What's your view on the way they've handled this matter? We saw you with the NCC, like yesterday they were doing that, you were there as well. Are you happy with how government has responded, especially on the issue where you say lives in SA are as good as lives in the US? Do you think the response from government came timely, and do you think something would have been done differently in the aftermath of the death, or even now the recall? Some people are saying it took too long. Do you think government reacted appropriately to this case?
My question relates to that, to the National Consumer Commission. They told us yesterday that they only heard of this matter through the media in December last year. What's your reaction to that? Do you think they should have acted more speedily, sooner?
I'll give you my opinion on that question, and then let Rod answer the issue on the NCC, because he was at the NCC yesterday morning. Certainly they could have reacted sooner. Are we saying that 46 fires requires an employee from the NCC to read an article or media or social media to bring this to their attention? These fires have taken place throughout the country, in every province, or almost every province. It's been published widely in 2015, covered on radio, covered on TV, covered on internet media. How does the NCC monitor these things?
Something I'd like to add. I know yesterday it was mentioned that none of the fire victims had complained to the NCC. But when speaking to each one of them individually, I've picked up that they have complained to the NCC. There are some complaint forms that have been sent through. They said they've been pushed from post to pillar and nothing's been done about it, to the extent of them complaining to the ombudsman. They say their cases then would just go missing. They then would take on Ford, from Ford push towards the insurance. But there's definitely a lot of people that have complained to the NCC that have suffered fires. I've found their documents and I have knowledge of that.
And if I may add one additional point in that regard, we in fact do have email correspondence to Mr. Trevor Hutton, who I see is present from the NCC, was addressed to the NCC prior to any initial meetings with Ford. We received no response to the email. We again at the beginning of the year attempted to contact them via email, requesting an audience with them in order that we can hand over the relevant applications. That too received no response. We then took it upon ourselves to attend at the NCC yesterday morning in order to hand over the 31 claims, which we had compiled to date. Mr. Hutton refused to see us and in fact wanted us escorted from the building. Only subsequent to that did the Senior Legal Counsel of the NCC then give us an audience, at which stage we then handed over the applications. From my perspective and the family's perspective, we were quite shocked in the manner in which we were dealt with. Obviously, given the gravity of the situation as well as the publicity that the matter is receiving, that we were indeed present to deal with that matter and to hand over said application forms, and we were referred to a member of the administrative staff who then assisted us in handing over the application forms. But the overriding point being is that we did in fact contact the NCC prior to any engagement with Ford in December.
Before I get to your question, Graham, let's give Trevor from the National Competition Commission a quick chance to respond to these comments. Trevor? It's Trevor Hutton from the National Consumer Commission.
I want to begin by, thanks and good morning. I want to begin by first clarifying what took place yesterday morning. I was contacted by security and informed that there were people filming the premises, the buildings, and they said they've got authorizations from...
No problem.
Sorry. Okay, thanks. Just to clarify the issue of yesterday morning. What took place yesterday morning is that I was contacted by our receptionist and informed that there were gentlemen down there that were taking footage of the premises. Now, in terms of our security protocols, that is not allowed. So I was then told that the gentleman said that they received authorization from myself to take footage of the building. I then told him, the security said, I don't know who these gentlemen are, and I had not in any way whatsoever given anyone permission to take footage of the premises. I, at that stage, did not know who it was, and I told him that you know what your protocols and processes are. If someone breaches security on the premises, do your job. I don't know who these people are. A few minutes later, I received a call from one of the attorneys, I forgot the name, and he then told me that he's got an appointment with me. Now, last week Friday, I was not at work to begin with, and secondly, when I got to work on Monday, I had no appointment with anyone in my diary. In addition to that, yesterday I was busy preparing for the briefing that took place yesterday. At the time when I received that phone call from security and from the gentleman subsequently, I was busy drafting a speech for the commissioner to be delivered on the day, and also taking RSVPs for the media that would be there on the day. So it's quite unfortunate that things had to happen that way. But there was at no point any appointment that was made with me. However, what I did was I contacted legal services and I asked them to attend to the matter. I told him that there's a gentleman downstairs and he said that he's there with the Jimmy matter. He's got a number of cases, and in fact, it's their area of expertise. I'm a media person. I do not deal with complaints. However, the information gets to me, and my job is to make sure that that information gets processed and gets out into the public domain to explain and to get people to understand what our job and our purpose is. So that's just to clarify that issue. At no point did we refuse, or I myself refuse, to not take any complaints from anyone. I just referred the matter to the relevant people to deal with it, and also I never had any appointment to see any person, and I also never asked anyone to escort anybody from the premises. That's security protocols. You get in there, you breach security protocols, they will escort you from the premises. But I asked them not to remove them, and I said, let me get legal services to attend to the matter, and the matter was attended to. They received, I think, 31 complaints from there. What was the second part, Tanya? There was an allegation, and I'm going to call it an allegation because when we were briefed by our complaints handling unit, we were informed that at no stage did they receive any complaints prior to somewhat after the first meeting we had with Ford. And that is what they said. And I think it's also important for me to stress that in terms of the law, there is a prescribed way that a complaint is lodged with us. Now, if you send us an email and you tell us that I've got an issue with X, Y, and Z, what we ordinarily do is we respond outlining the processes for lodging a complaint with us. If you have to go to a court, certain things need to be in place. The administrative part of things must be in place. And that's one of the other things that I wanted to also stress. So it is important for someone to lodge a complaint in terms of the prescribed way. If it's not lodged in terms of the prescribed way and manner, then it is regarded as you notifying us. It's not regarded as an official complaint. So in terms of our complaint statistics, we have stats of complaints that flooded in last week. Official complaints, I think it's in the region of 7. However, I need to also stress that over the holiday period we were closed, and during that time, yes, there will definitely be a backlog. People only really started coming to work last week, so there's quite a number of complaints that need to be processed, still needs to be processed, and by the time that we are done processing them, we'll be able to give an exact figure of how many complaints in respect of the Ford Kuga matter we've received thus far. And just to take this a bit further, just before we take it a bit further, yes, there is something that the Commission can do about this. In addition to that, you see, we have complaints now. And for the mere fact that we have complaints now, it means that we are able to do our own independent investigation because we've got a different side of the story as opposed to what was told by Ford only all the time. Now we've got the public coming forward, we've got consumers telling us what exactly is happening on the ground, and we can then assign the investigation to technical experts or enlist technical experts that can deal with the matter properly and tell us what has happened. And yes, we can take the matter to the tribunal or court or wherever we will, depending on what we find in terms of our investigation and if what we have before us in terms of the complaints warrant an investigation. Now, I also want to go just slightly a bit further and say that yes, consumers out there can still at this point in time, regardless of the recall, they can also still pursue civil litigation, or they can still come to the Consumer Commission for assistance. Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor. Okay, Graham, Anton, let's start here and then we'll get to you guys.
You spoke about the process. My name is Malungelo from ENCA. You spoke about the process when you get an email. Did you tell the people what they must do? Did you do a follow-up so that you make sure that they are attended to? Because it's all good and fair to say this is what you're supposed to do, but if you've not actually advised people on what to, did you do that in this particular case?
Okay, we're going to take it back to Anton.
Yes, my question relates to that. What's the difference between an official complaint and a notification? And then what exactly does the Consumer Commission do with a complaint? Do you just take it and chuck it? What do you do with the, not the complaint, the notification that people send you? If it's not an official complaint, do you investigate a notification or do you ignore it? What happens with the notification? Can you just explain that to us?
Okay, Brian?
In terms of the class action, Rod, you were saying that with the NCC you're going to be pursuing a class action. Starting in terms of this class action, how does it work? Will there be first an investigation by the tribunal, and from the tribunal does it then go to the courts, or how does it work? Does the tribunal investigate, or the matter before the tribunal run parallel to a class action, and how can the commission assist in the class action?
Okay, to ensure that I don't make an error in any way whatsoever, I brought a legal brain with me to answer that question for you. Right? Is that the last one? And then I can get him to answer Malungelo. Okay, Malungelo, you see, what happens is when the police, when 10111 receives a call from someone, and the person is unable to verify or provide information such as his address or his telephone number or anything of that kind, it is regarded as as a hoax or a prank or something like that, right? Now, in terms of the law, there is a prescribed way that complaints must be lodged by consumers, right? In order for us to pursue those complaints. Now, if a consumer sends us a notification, what normally happens is, in that notification, our reply to that notification is a very, very detailed reply. And yes, we do note the discussion or the explanation of what the type of complaint is. And that is why we have we have a forum inside where we normally decide on investigations, and we also have a knowledge management unit that actually monitors trends outside in the market. Now, if there's an isolated email coming from someone saying this, we will inform and advise the consumer what exactly to do to lodge the complaint, and we normally explain to them why it's important for us to provide us with evidence, to provide us with the complaint lodge in the prescribed manner. But insofar as following up, let's be realistic about it. We are a small commission with limited funds, limited resources, human and financial. And do you really think that it's sensible for us to now phone every single person who has sent us an email and told us that
it's a consumer? If a person is a consumer, say, I think you have to follow up on that.
Okay, let me also then say this to you, Malungelo. I hear what you're saying, but you need to understand, I've mentioned and outlined to you that we have limited resources, and if the consumer does not come back to us, we have noted the concern. In most instances, it's just a one line or something, I have a problem somewhere. The information is not sufficient. So the person wants guidance, the person wants assistance, and we provide very detailed guidance. In fact, we've got people communicating in different languages to ensure that we unpack and outline this so that every single person out there really understands what is required from you. Send me this, send me that, send me this. If you can't, we'll make arrangements with the provinces so that you can walk in if you do not have the financial resources to email or to post or anything. But we do make quite an effort to get the information from the consumers out there. If things do not come back to us after a while, I mean, we can only then monitor trends in society, we can monitor international and local trends as well. But that's as far as we can go insofar as that is concerned. We cannot force someone to actually come and bring the complaints to us after we've tried everything on our side to solicit the information or to get the complaint officially registered with us. The second one was about the...
Can I just say something on that question? From what Trevor just...
Sorry, man. Pardon me. Sorry.
Okay, what I find extremely concerning is I hear what Trevor is saying, that it's very difficult to get through to every consumer. But regarding the Ford matter, I personally called Trevor on his cell phone after he spoke, I think, to the Times. I tabled the entire story to him of Reshall Jimmy. I told him about all Ford fire victims. He listened to what I said. He gave me his email address, which I've got his SMSs, saying send us all of this information, and we will personally, we need to make reference to that. But from that conversation, I tried since December to date, yesterday, going Friday, contacting Trevor. He blocked me. I can't get through to him. I'm definitely blocked by him. I sent him email communications letting him know I'm sitting with these forms, I'm trying to call your office, please answer my calls, I need to get these through to you. He did not respond to me. You know, the only service we got from the NCC, and we're so grateful for, was their legal counsel. They were so pleasant. They went out of their way to help us. And yes, Trevor did ask the security to escort us off the premises. We did not say we're allowed to, there was media present. At no point did the media actually say we're allowed to record here. They just said, okay, sorry, and they put their cameras away. but we refused to leave because we said, look, Trevor, we here with the Jimmy family, we want to drop off these complaints. And he said, the lady came down and she said, Trevor told us we should escort you off the premises by security. And she said, you know, we're so sorry, and she was so apologetic for it. But to our savior came their legal team, who was very kind and went out of their way to help us. But the manner in which Trevor has treated us as the consumer and has treated Ford, it's questionable. You know, if the legal team has not spoken to us, I would have been thinking that the NCC is now siding with Ford. But Trevor has handled us in a horrible manner, and I would hope that they don't do this in the future with other consumers.
Can I respond to that
Quickly, our time is running out as well. I'll give you a chance to respond to that.
Okay. I think I already outlined what exactly transpired yesterday. There's no way that I can ever turn anyone away from our offices. Also, and I'm going to go a bit further, just to say with regards to the whole Ford matter, at no stage did we, as the Consumer Commission, want to get involved in any of the matters in terms of demonstrating that we are taking a side with anyone. I spoke to Reshall, and I explained to her exactly how to lodge a complaint. Sorry, my apologies, my apologies. Renisha, I spoke to her, yes, I think it was in December, I did speak to her, and I explained to her exactly how the matter should be lodged with us. And I also explained to her what needs to be done and how it needs to be done. She then wanted to know about the meeting with Ford at our offices and all of these kind of things. And I, unfortunately, was not at liberty to give her that. And that is when I stopped responding to her via telephone, because now it was becoming an harassment all day long. It was just becoming an harassment at that time.
All right, guys, thanks.
No.
Let's get back to the matter at hand. I think Trevor is here and his legal advisors here. If you want to speak to them afterwards, you can speak to them. Is that fine?
Yeah.
Thank you. Questions for the family? We don't have a lot of time left. Graham, you had a question for the attorney?
Yeah, just in connection with the class action. How does the NCC assist in the class action? Does the NCC's investigation around the tribunal processes, does that run parallel to any class action processes, or does it form part of the class action processes? And also, what action can the tribunal take against a product manufacturer? Please, thank you.
I have an expert for you to answer. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jerome Diva. I'm the Senior Legal Advisor for the National Consumer Commission. Just to respond to the questions pertaining to the National Consumer Commission's processes in terms of how we go about conducting investigations. Once we are seized with a complaint, or where an instances where in law we are permitted to actually initiate a complaint, naturally there should be a formal investigation that is authorized in terms of the Consumer Protection Act. Once that investigation unfolds in terms of verifying the facts as against the alleged transgressed sections of the Consumer Protection Act, then the investigation will ultimately translate into a finding that suggests that there was wrongdoing, either on the part of the supplier or either the merits do not support that. The manner in which we would go about in ensuring that there is finality to this matter would have to, it will actually translate into either us recommending that either the matter should be referred to the National Consumer Tribunal to have that specific conduct or that specific transgressed section declared prohibited. Or if the conduct that allegedly has been breached in terms of either one or a combination of such sections in the Consumer Protection Act, it's actually continuing that the supplier is in the process of still transgressing and there's potential harm or prejudice to consumers, then we can also ask the consumer to issue what we call a compliance notice. Now, having said that, that doesn't take away the general public or consumers' constitutional right to pursue other remedies like ordinarily approaching a court, going to seek to have an order for damages put in place, and the court then obviously determine as to whether there would be quantum that is payable. But that would ordinarily be in terms of the common law provisions, can also be in terms of sections of the Consumer Protection Act.
So ordinarily, once we assist with a complaint and an allegation is that there was, like in this case, a hazardous product, as in the case of Ford, that has led to the life and limb prejudice of a specific individual. And then now we now pursue an investigation with a view of verifying that particular determination. We can only act within the confines of the Consumer Protection Act because we are a creature of the Consumer Protection Act. We are not mandated that we can then pursue a case on behalf of a consumer in your ordinary normal course of litigation. Like, we cannot be seen to be taking instruction like an attorney or an advocate litigate on the matter. However, we can, if there is a class action out there, for example, if the Jimmy family, through their legal advice, they say, okay, they decide that there's going to be a litigation in court, we can then approach the court to apply to become an amicus curiae, meaning that we can then apply to say we have an interest in the matter, purely from a principal point of view, to assist the court to either, in fact, amicus curiae's application essentially is not either for one of the party or the other, but to actually assist a court to be better prepared in actually making such a determination as to whether or not whatever direction that the case needs to be done. I'm told that we have received 31 complaints, which I've been made to understand that there is a common denominator with respect that all of them allegedly were occasioned by an hazard that was detected as a result of combustion that is caused by Ford Kuga. And almost all consumers that are in that particular file, they suffer identical prejudice or similar prejudices. Those two aspects will probably, by the way, I'm not going to preempt what the outcome of the investigation is going to be. It's only yesterday that we were seized with the documents. We still have to assess them. We still have to obviously determine the merits and demerits. But hypothetically, if, for instance, an investigation were to culminate into us having established a basis that there is a common denominator and the prejudice that was suffered by all the 31 or more complaints was actually similar, having occasioned by this particular source, I think those are some of the considerations that we'll have to make as to whether the appropriate course of action in trying to arrest this problem. The appropriate tool would be to embark on a class action. But in that process, there's a nitpicking process of having to look at each and every individual complaint, so that at the end of the day, you should be able to say, we didn't just close over this thing. There was not just a superficial determination to say, look, there's a commonality, there's a common denominator. We're able to list all of the cases, 1 up until 31, with individual complaints, and able to say all of them, there is a common denominator. We can identify that on each and every specific complaint who was affected, it was occasioned by one common act of prejudice, and therefore the route to take, because you'll understand that the class action, even in a normal course of litigation, when you bring a class action in a court of law, before the court can actually give you leave to say they're going to hear you on that particular premises, you need to make a case that it's actually qualified. There are certain factors that the court look into to say it's befitting that it's a class action, or the court can then say, no. We're going to actually look at these cases as individual. We are not there yet from where we're sitting.
Thank you very much. Antoinette?
How far, from a technical point of view and a process point of view, how far are you along with this class action? And have you begun to quantify the claim, or how?
When we use the term class action, it doesn't mean that it will be issued as per one legal document. Each matter needs to be dealt with on its individual merits. So we are still then obviously in the process of consulting with clients, establishing exactly what the quantum of damages suffered in each individual case were. There are additional factors to be considered, which would be along the lines of vehicles that needed to be hired, increase in insurance premiums, and specifically, if I might then refer to the Reshall Jimmy matter, obviously the quantum, where I can illustrate the individuality of each matter, the quantum would obviously be vastly more than any of the other claims, where a life was actually lost and that would obviously have to be quantified in terms of earning potential, etc.
How long does does a whole class action take before it actually comes to court? I mean, what is it? Is the time? Are we talking months, years?
It's very difficult because I think the merits and obviously the number of cases that we're dealing with will actually dictate the length at which the process will unfold. I don't know if in law there's any prescribed measures to say it has to be blocked into certain weeks or months and whatever. The courts and this process will determine as to how long it will take.
All right, do we have more questions for the family members? They will be here afterwards as well if you want to speak to them, as well as the Competition Commission, and also Sean. Where are you now, Sean? The other Kuga victim. Thank you all so much for your time. I would like to ask the family if you would like to make any closing remarks.
Look, I'd like to thank the media for everything you've done since this has broken by Graham Hoskins on the first article. I firmly believe that with your support, we've managed to get enough attention, which has in turn created attention to Ford Kuga drivers. And I think Sean Thompson is sitting in the far back, who is on our forum of victims. He would attest to that. We've heard from other victims stating that because of the media attention created, they became quite reactive to that. When the fires started in their car and the smoke started surfacing, they were fast enough to react and save their families. So we've lost only one life, but I think with media and with the social media campaign we've created, we've certainly saved a lot more. It's an opinion, but this comes from the words of the people that we've spoken to. 46 victims has been in touch with Renisha, and Sean Thompson is on our group, and he is quite active in that group, and he speaks to people daily. And I can't read all of those texts because it's quite draining to read how much trauma these people have and carry every day. They're afraid to get into their cars, as you heard earlier. They're worried about, is it really safe? And I think the trust factor from Ford has been severed with these consumers, which is a really, really sad thing, because a brand is only a brand when a consumer trusts that brand. And now we have Ford, who's made every effort, in our opinion, to sever that trust relationship with them. And these people are in a very, very difficult position because they don't know what to do. Most of these Ford Kuga drivers are not in a financial position to just go and buy a vehicle and replace it. They are forced to live with this vehicle. And with the trade-in values that have been reduced so poorly in the market, they can't trade that vehicle in and get an equal type of vehicle for their families. So thank you to the media for everything you've done so far.
Thank you so much, guys, and we wish you, well, not luck, but we wish you well on this journey. Okay. Thanks, guys. We're back at 12 for this next meeting. Maybe give it to these guys. Yes, we've got the South African
Oh, okay.
Thank you so much. It's not nothing to come here in front of live TV to talk about.
No. Thanks. Yes, we just got to chat to him because he's still against it.
I spoke to our
Okay.